Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So let's dive right into this episode of Think Tank. Should we ban engagement rings? I mean, let's just see what they have to say. At least the co-host is male. That's a first for the channel, so we'll see how much Hannah interrupts male co-hosts compared to female co-hosts.
What's up, guys? Hannah and Amit here. So I read a really interesting article the other day on Splinter News, which is something, an outlet that I'm really enjoying right now, so I implore you all to check it out. But they had this article about whether or not we should ban engagement rings, right? And so they were talking about how it was sort of an antiquated process, right? You're essentially putting a ring in a heterosexual relation, putting a ring on a woman to determine your ownership over her. And it was sort of this antiquated patriarchal structure that used to be just like a band. And then I think it was in the 20s or the 30s, like De Beers, when they were suffering, they made it so that you had to buy a woman a diamond. And now it is this insane sort of industry where people are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a ring that you put on to say, hi, I own you.
Okay, we can talk about what it meant in the past, but I think what this whole video is about is what it means right now. And as of right now, giving someone an engagement ring, whether you're hetero or whatever the fuck kind of relationship you're in, doesn't claim ownership. I think most people do it with the feeling of love, of saying, hey, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, so I'm giving you this because maybe right now is not the time to get married, maybe we don't have the money, maybe we're too young, whatever, but I do want to marry you and I do want to spend the rest of my life with you. So I don't know what kind of world you're living in, but most people give engagement rings with that purpose, with that feeling of love, not the like, oh hey, so I own you now, you're off the market, I'm gonna just like lock you into the closet and when I'm ready to marry you, I'll let you out.
Why you so stupid?
The fact that Hannah tries to conflate what it was in previous history compared to right now is a little bit ridiculous. And aside from that, I'm pretty sure that most men or women, whoever gets the engagement ring, is more than anything pleased, overjoyed, and happy that someone would want to invest money in a ring, whether it's cheap or not. It doesn't even matter if it's like expensive or cheap, but would want to get that ring, which is a gesture, which means, hey, let's be together forever. But go off, Hannah, I guess.
Do you think we should ban them?
I mean, I think banning might be the wrong word here. I don't think necessarily we need like the government to come out in vans and like take people away, you know. But I do think it's a good idea for us, for everyone to question like the value of them. Like, what do they really serve? Like, what's the history behind them? Like you said, right? Like they come from, you know, like it was initially back in Rome, and like since then has been like kind of the signal of like transfer of property from dad to another man, and now and since the 1920s or 30s, you know, it's been hijacked and turned into like this massive money making scheme for, you know, a diamond cartel that you know has led to massive amounts of conflict in Africa, bloodshed, suffering in Africa. And what does it really represent? Like, you know, like ultimately, like what does it say? I mean, like I might feel a little differently if it was like both like the people involved giving rings to each other, like fancy rings to each other, but it's not. It's almost always like in these, you know, the hetero relationships, it's always like men giving a super expensive ring to a woman. And to me, it's kind of...
They're like, I think on average, I think it said that they're about $4,000 per ring.
Right.
That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's that. And it's also like, given that people make less money than ever before, the rings are getting more expensive. And you know, like who's it really serve? It's like, we already know, like, was it divorce rates in America are like 50%? Anyway.
Right.
Like, so
then you pawn that shit.
like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could say it for that reason, but it's like, why? Like, you know, ultimately, like, there is no value behind it. The value we assign to it is the only value there is.
Yeah. So
I'm glad that the guy at least said that we shouldn't use the term ban, because I do think that everyone has their own, obviously, their own right to get an engagement ring. And if someone wants to buy a $10,000 engagement ring, they're allowed to. And if someone wants to get someone a $100 engagement ring, they're allowed to. Jacob and I got engaged when we were young. I never expected him to buy anything of like extremely expensive, more than anything. I just expected us to be together. And the fact that they're really focusing on the history and I guess the production of and the economics is very interesting, but the reality is, in at least my personal point of view, is when someone is thinking about getting engaged and getting an engagement ring for their significant other, I don't think that their main thoughts are going to be economically based. Obviously, they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to spend this amount, this is my budget, whatever. But apart from that, I don't think they're going to be like,
hey, did you know that back in Rome it meant that, like a woman was a man's property, so now if I give this to my girlfriend who I want to turn into my fiance, I'm technically turning her into my property?
He said it himself, the value it has is the value we assign to it. And the value we have assigned to it for decades now, since rom-coms have been a big thing, especially in the movie industry, is that it means that you want to be together forever. And so I think that as much as we can all assign our personal meaning to it, there's also a societally accepted meaning to an engagement ring, right? It's love, right? That's the societally accepted norm. And so for them to act like, oh, it has no meaning whatsoever, well, it's just like, well, shit, then what are all these rom-coms going on about when they're talking about, oh
my god, he's gonna get me a ring, oh my god, we're gonna get engaged, we're gonna be together forever.
Let's not try and remove meaning from a meaning that is actually there.
I'm gonna take a controversial stance on this, especially as a staunch feminist. I don't think we should ban them. I think that it is a nice gesture, and I think that you're right. Like, I think it can go both ways. Like, I am a huge fan of symbolism.
Yeah.
For me, my favorite holiday is Passover, and Passover is like a whole holiday of symbols. And I think there's something really, really beautiful about finding symbolism. I try to find symbolism every single day, right? And so I think having a sort of exchange of like, oh, I am showing that I am committed to you through wearing this, there's something really nice about that.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe I'm just sort of thinking about like wedding rings, right? The exchange of wedding rings, and that sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Hannah, but how the fuck is that controversial? I'm pretty sure most other human being would say that, yeah, it's a symbol and it's nice and cool. So I appreciate that you're trying to do your snowflake thing, since you tend to call people snowflakes, but what you just said is like the least controversial thing you've ever said. And also, the way she expresses herself, I feel like is just getting worse and worse. She'll do the thing where she's like,
I'm gonna take a controversial stance on this.
You're so stupid!
Process, like, I think that there is something very romantic and beautiful about that. But that's just me, right? Like, that's what I sort of like. And I don't think it has to be a diamond. I don't think it has to have a stone. Like, I think they can look all sorts of different depending on what your partner wants, depending on your budget, like that kind of stuff. I think the pressure to like have this big hunking diamond is really silly. I'm saying that to all of you, not my future husband. Yes. He's out there somewhere. Hit me up. But I really do think that we like put a lot of confines on it, but I think that I still like the concept of it. Now, you had a very interesting engagement story. I'd love for you to tell us.
Yeah, so, my wife and I, before we got married, we basically we had a discussion like, do we want to get married? We're like, yeah, we do. But we then talked about like how we want to do it. And I think one thing we want to kind of avoid was like that very like typical, like, the dude gets down on one knee and proposes. Like I think like one thing the piece gets into is this idea of like men always have to pursue and women always have to wait to be pursued. Like that kind of like super like passive form.
Well, even sorry to interrupt you, but even like the getting down on one knee is sort of putting like a woman on the pedestal, which has all of these other really, bad societal implications.
Right, yeah. So we talked about like both of us wanted to propose to each other, and she wanted to do it first. Like we both made surprises. So she really tricked me. It was kind of amazing because she said, you know what, like, oh, we're going to our friend's birthday at a dog beach. And I'm like, he doesn't have a dog. That's weird. And the buddy's like, all right, whatever. And we get there and I see all my friends, all of our friends there. And she gets down on one knee and she gives me like a bow tie. She knows I love bow ties. And then a couple months later, I like surprise her and take her to karaoke, and I, get down on one knee and propose to her with like a giant platter of cheeses because she loves cheese. And it's like
wait, I changed my mind. I don't know if I want the diamonds. I want cheese. I want a lot of cheese.
Also, I don't know anything about cheese.
Okay, so there is some part of this that I agree with. I do think that societally, a lot of women tend to wait or think that they have to wait, or maybe, like they feel this imposition of having to wait. Obviously, I'm an example of a person who didn't do that. If you don't know, I proposed to Jacob because I don't want to wait. I think it's dumb to wait if you want to be with someone forever, because I don't want to take a dark turn, but this channel always takes dark turns. I don't want to take a really dark turn, but it's just like the reality is I don't know what my health is going to be like in a week. I don't know if I'm going to be alive in a week. I don't know anything more than the fact that I'm alive today. And that's how I was thinking when I proposed. And it's not like I proposed impromptu, like, oh yeah, let's do this. I thought about it, but I also realized that if anything ever of tragic happened, I wouldn't have wanted to be like, oh yeah, I was waiting for Jacob to propose, I wanted to take that control in my life. So this idea that women are passive, we could say that the majority wait for the guy to propose, but it's not really a rule. Like it's something that happens, but it's very much in our control. Kind of like when we talk about victimization, right? You can control whether you put yourself in the position of a victim or not. And it's the same as this. You can choose to wait or you can choose to go for it. And I like the story of this guy that is very different. I've never heard anything like that, and I think it's really cool that they took an approach that is super particular to them, because I do think that, having the guy get down on one knee, that's cool. If that's what you're into, that is totally fine. I'm not going to judge anyone's preferences, but I do think that it is a smart idea to really question what it is that you want rather than just following a formula, because when you do it your own different way, the way you really want it to be, it's way more meaningful. Although the bow tie and the cheese to me was kind of lame, but do you?
So I asked all of our friends, like, bring a cheese or something. So it was not just for me, it was like for everybody, right? And so like for me, like those gifts are like that kind of proposal is, in a way, like for ourselves was more meaningful than having like, a piece of rock that doesn't mean anything. It's like there's a asteroid out there that's made of pure diamond that if we somehow brought it back to Earth, like would make diamonds completely worthless.
Yeah.
Like diamonds are only like valuable.
Rare.
Well, they're rare in the sense like that they're, De Beers, the cartel, manages control of it. If someone found like a giant hunk of diamond out there, it would basically shatter the price
right
and the value of it. So it's like we want to do something that for ourselves meant a lot, not necessarily like something that would signal to other people like, oh, like we really love each other, because it's like that doesn't really matter to us. And it's also like those signals don't mean anything because, like you said before, the divorce rate's like 50%.
Yeah.
So that was our engagement, and I think the big thing has been, seeing like, asking yourself, asking your partner, like, what do you really value?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times, like, people go with, like, they're on autopilot, like, because getting married or getting engaged is super scary, and, like, not scary, but just, like, there's a lot of things to it. So people, when you go on autopilot, you just pick whatever thing that, everybody else is doing.
Right.
And that necessarily might not be, like, a giant piece of, smashed carbon.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Or maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm curious to hear from you guys, like, what... Like, I want to hear, like, how...
So a thing I noticed before, and that I noticed again, is that they bring up divorce rates. And as much as divorce rates and marriage are obviously tied, it's very interesting that they connected it specifically to engagement rings, because it almost seemed like the implication was like, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to buy a $4,000 engagement ring because, like half of you are going to get divorced. Is that statistic even correct anymore? Because I feel like I read somewhere that statistic wasn't even real anymore. But let's pretend that statistic is correct. Whatever statistic it is, it's just like, I don't understand why they're bringing up the divorce thing, because when you're talking about engagement, divorce shouldn't really be counted into the equation, and it just shouldn't. It has nothing to do with it, unless you think you're going to get divorced, in which case you probably shouldn't get engaged in the first place. But yeah, this was a difficult one, mainly because they did for once bring up valid points. I guess everything happens once in a lifetime. But let me know what you guys think about all this. Anyways, before we get into the fan art, I'd like to thank all of my patrons for supporting my channel. Thank all of you so much, and let's get into the fan